4 more minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give 1 or 2 minutes for people to join, and then we'll kick off. Okay, Andrew, I think if you could fire, if you're controlling the slides, if you could fire the deck up, and maybe we can start. You're on mute, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And I'm just checking to see if you can see the slides.
I can see them, perfect. If people online can give a thumbs up to confirm, that would be great. Cool. Lovely. Okay, while people are joining, perhaps we could just rest on the second slide, but today we are going to be talking specifically about refugee identity management system and service delivery. But if we could just go to the next slide, Andrew, then I'd just like to set some context in terms of UNHCR's digital transformation strategy. So I'm just going to spend 5 minutes at the beginning talking through that. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to start with this slide because I think this is an initiative that Jesse, who's in the picture, started in Kakuma, and I think is just a really inspirational example of what you can do when you have connectivity and when you have access. And this was a group of coders that were working in Kakuma, developing a range of different applications for use in the community, including Android revision apps and other kind of community-based apps. And it just shows how much you can do when you've got the tools and when you've got the inclusion and you've got the connectivity that you need to move forward. So always like to start with that, just to show the change and the difference that digital can make to everybody's lives, as long as they're included in that. So over the course of 2020, UNHCR started to work on the development of a digital strategy for the organisation. We're increasingly seeing the opportunities and also the risks that brings. And so we worked across the organisation to develop a cross-cutting digital strategy that would be looking at how we needed to apply that across our work. So Andrew, if you could go to the next slide. The digital strategy focused on 5 key areas, and we're going to talk specifically about one of those areas today. But really, if we look at these kind of 5 areas of priority, the first being digital inclusion. So just shown by the previous slide, the importance of what happens when you are connected to the digital world, the importance that everybody has the right to be connected, and the benefits that brings from education to training, to connection with family, and really just making sure that everyone has the possibility to engage in that potential and to be part of that. However, we have seen over the course of the years risks emerging from being online. So this could be risk of trafficking. We could see the risks of hate speech and misinformation, and other risks of the use of technology. So one of our second core priorities is how do we address that risk, and how do we make sure the protection is in place for those who are connecting from a forcibly displaced and stateless background. And then, in terms of how we operate and how we can deliver services more effectively, once that connectivity in place, once somebody is on their journey to safety, how can they access the digital services that they need? How can we register them? How can they have access to the different information, critical information they need, or registration services? And Andrew, Leah, and Sam will talk about that today. The other part of the strategy is more inward looking, which is actually looking at digital engagement and how do we communicate more effectively across our different stakeholders. But this equally is important from ensuring that we have two-way engagement across the communities we work with. And also we adapt our services to meet the feedback that we get from our stakeholders. And lastly, working digitally, how can we actually be more effective operationally and bring in new technologies and take advantages of new technologies? For example, can we use Internet of Things to monitor water delivery and water levels in remote situations to avoid the need to travel unnecessarily? Is there other ways of putting in new technologies that make us more efficient, whether that be across the organization or in specific locations? And we have a great approach with our innovation team, which is around catalyzing digital innovation at a operation level, looking at how we can fund those new ideas when they come up, and looking how we can scale them across the organization. So this is all done with a big focus on people, and tomorrow there'll be a focus on change makers and this initiative that we've put in to kind of raise skills across and tap into the expertise across the organization. So there'll be a presentation of digital change makers, but how we work with partners, how we work with private sector, how we advocate for change, how we evidence what's happening now and what needs to change for the future, and how we address new ethical approaches in terms of human rights due diligence and making sure that the right choices are made when we're doing and applying new different technologies at an operational level. So that's a very kind of brief introduction of the digital strategy, and I just wanted to place that and in the context of today's talk. I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's now going to talk specifically around the identity and services element and how we're adapting around that. And over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mike. And my name is Andrew Hopkins. I work with the Digital Identity and Registration section here in Copenhagen, covering globally UNHCR's efforts to support the registration activities that we undertake across well over 130 operations globally. We have had quite a journey over the years on working with the populations that we serve, and we use, of course, digital means to help refugees, so and displaced persons, stateless as well. So we really want to make sure that the work that we do is done for the good and the benefit of those people who are vulnerable and displaced because of conflict. We've seen in this organization, and we've all seen across all our work, unprecedented levels of global displacement. And by the end of this year, we're looking at well over 130 million displaced persons globally. This is a huge number, and it just gives you an idea of the scale of our work and how many individuals we want to access and help when we do our work. UNHCR is a global refugee agency. It's the global agency that helps to protect people forced to flee their homes. We work in more than 150 countries, and we protect millions of people by responding with life-saving support. We respond to emergencies, we protect human rights, and we really work to build better futures. And we really work across a whole range of, over the years, of displacement in all continents. This one being in sub-Saharan Africa, of course, on the border of Tanzania and Rwanda. This is where I started my career, roughly a little before, and then looking also to just today, frankly, with the displacements in very different contexts of Ukraine's coming here into Poland. So we are faced with a great deal of challenges when really trying to know the people we wish to serve, and we undertake the registration of those individuals to be able to help them, and that is to provide everything from cash to other benefits, family reunification, protection delivery, and so on. We follow, when registering, a set of standards, making sure that our work is people-centered and inclusive, that we provide universal access, and this is really interesting in the digital domain, especially these last years, that we register all persons individually, that we make sure that the collection of our data is accurate, that we adhere to known procedures and predictable ones, and that, of course, we follow data protection principles when collecting information on these vulnerable populations. Again, I stress the importance of individual registration and making sure that each and every person that we want to serve is known to us, and this is very important in our work. I'm going to hand over to Sam now, who works with me on identity management. He'll speak a little bit to the evolution of identity management and talk about some of the new innovations in the area of our work. Over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Andrew. So hi, everybody. My name is Sam Jeffries. I'm the head of a digital services and biometrics unit, working with Andrew and team in headquarters Copenhagen. So we've been doing identity management and registration in UNHCR for more than 70 years now. And ever since day one, we've been trying to use the most appropriate and most effective technologies we've had available to us to deliver that life-saving protection, assistance, and solutions. Now, back on day one, that might have been just using a wristband or a ration card. And indeed, for many years, many families across the globe would only have a ration card as one paper ration card to represent their entire family unit, which is, as we all know, quite inferior and insufficient to really represent sort of who the individuals of a family are. So over the last years, we've been undertaking increasingly more individualized registration and trying to better understand the profiles and the needs of each person and each family to be able to better support and protect them. If we go to the next slide, please, Andrew. In this part of the presentation, we'll speak about digital tools, and as with the rest of the world, UNHCR has been undertaking a digital transformation. So how have digital tools really helped us? If we go to the next slide. So right now, as of today, we're operating with a digital platform for identity management, registration, and biometrics in 138 countries worldwide. We have nearly 30 million individuals protected by our systems, and of those who we see regularly, more than 70% have a biometric record with us. We've got a large user base of more than 15,000 staff, where a large percentage of those 15,000 are not just working for UNHCR, but work for the governments and partners with whom we work. And that digital platform covers off every aspect of our case management work, from the initial registration to the designing and provisioning of cash assistance, in-kind assistance, and all the way through to eventual solutions or including resettlement. However, the launch of any digital platform is not without challenge, and we thought it would be worthwhile spending a moment just to speak about the unique operating environments that I think many on this call will be quite familiar with, but that differ extremely from many environments one might expect in a normal sort of state's registration capacity. Often, when you think about civil registration or biometrics at a border crossing, you think about a sort of clean and airport type situation with offices and very predictable environments. And in reality, for us, the truth couldn't be anywhere like that. So this photo I took on the border of Somaliland in Hol Hol Camp in Djibouti, and the digital platforms that we've designed and implemented in UNHCR have to accommodate a world of variety across all of our different operations and across all of the countries in which we work. So there's some extremely challenging technical and environmental considerations that we have to accommodate in the delivery of these systems. And the systems itself, of course, are only as effective as the people who are using them. So in UNHCR, and this links back to Mike's point earlier, we're conscious that there's no point in just delivering a system and expecting our workforce to know how to use it. And so we've invested an awful lot of time and effort to make sure that the systems are fit for purpose for the staff who are going to be using them on the front lines, as well as making sure those staff are adequately trained, and that includes UNHCR staff as well as staff from our partners and governments with which we work. Also of note, in rolling out digital, are considerations around logistics and infrastructure, and often a response to an emergency, which is one of our main mandate responsibilities, is only as effective as how timely it can be. So rolling out a digital platform often also requires the setting up of infrastructure. So we're investing a lot in working out how to bring infrastructure and how to make our approach as efficient and easy to roll out as possible, both for our work with ourselves, but also our work with partners. Go to the next slide, please. So the use of digital technologies and platforms has brought efficiencies and collaborations and helped to amplify our results across a number of different case management and protection areas. To give just one example up front, when we started to roll out the use of biometrics in food distribution in 2013, we did a before and after study and realized there that we were, between us and the World Food Programme, saving in excess of $1.4 million a month compared to when we were not using more advanced identity management techniques. That just speaks to the savings made through preventing a diversion, but it doesn't even speak to the savings made through significantly reducing the amount of time required to deliver assistance in life-saving scenarios, which also has a considerable financial impact. During the pandemic, we saw the world change, and we saw the world change, and access to our populations was severely hampered. While we could accommodate changes to the ways in which we serve people up front, face to face, we also saw that those people who would normally have to travel across borders to us were no longer able to reach us for services, as well as those who would come into our offices in urban centres were severely hampered from being able to do so. And that led to an investment in UNHCR towards connecting with people digitally and through digital channels, which my colleague is going to speak about soon. Similarly, when the Ukraine response started in 2022, we launched our first digital outreach program, which saw more than 300,000 families approach us for assistance in the first 7 days of setting up this digital system, which added further evidence to the benefits that can be brought about through intelligent digital programming. So going forward, we're confident that digital identity can and should be an asset for refugees rather than just for UNHCR. So what does that mean? We really want to help refugees access our services with ease and security, and we want to help refugees be able to assert that identity to anyone else. Photo here from Bangladesh. And here's an example of one of our latest generation of identity cards, which allows people to self-assert that the validity of their identity credentials to anybody in any context using a commonly available app on the App Store. This example now is available in 34 countries worldwide and has protected people from arbitrary arrest as well as being returned to their home countries unnecessarily. Last point here. So we've seen already through some of the examples I've shared some of the benefits, but it's also worth noting that just through the confidence that we've managed to build in identity, that's led to other states being able to rely on the identity data that we gathered and then permit the issuance of bank accounts opening and SIM card issuance. So that's certainly the case in the Congo, in Malawi and Niger, and something we're looking to push out to other states as well. And similarly in Kenya for mobile money registration. Next slide. And this is my last slide here. So last point on the impact of digital. We have increasingly seen how the distribution of cash is something favoured by our populations. And over the last few years, we've switched to transferring cash to really by digital means. So more than 80% of cash is now transferred through digital means, which has significantly sped up our ability to respond to people in life-saving situations. And that was, I think, expressly demonstrated during the onset of the Ukraine crisis. At this point, I think I'll hand over to my colleague, Leah, who's going to talk about designing a digital gateway for refugees. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Berdegji, and I work at the Digital Identity and Registration section here in Copenhagen with Andrew and Sam. And I'm responsible for coordinating the Digital Gateway project. So I'm really happy to tell you all about it today. Next slide, please. So the way we design our self-service tools, or what I'll be talking about now, is that it's always about putting the user at the center. So we've got teams of user experience experts and user research experts who've done a lot of work directly with our beneficiaries. There's been on-site research, interviews, workshops, online surveys, so all kinds of ways to reach out to our populations and find out what they really expect from us in the digital world. Next, please. And so the findings from this user research, which went across 28,000 users, is that we found out that users really do welcome self-service. Even though they're not necessarily experienced in using online services, they still really prefer to have that additional way of communication with us. Most users connect through their smartphones, so not necessarily laptops and tablets, but mostly smartphones. And but they still have a lot of challenges. So phone numbers change often, and situations of displacement, they don't always have access to data. Their phones may be out of date or have broken screens, but they still really want to have that way of reaching out. The top cases, the top services that they requested from us is ways of updating their contact details so that we can stay in contact with them, scheduling appointments remotely, registering with us, and so on. The users want concise information and tasks in one place. They don't want to have to go across all of our websites and Facebook pages and all of that to be able to get information. Digital literacy is a barrier. We know that even simple tasks sometimes can pose challenge, which is why we need to mitigate that in different ways. So testing early, often, and more importantly, in local languages. So this slide I thought was really important to share today because it really gives you a glimpse of what a refugee or a displaced person's journey looks like and how digital services could really be of help in these kinds of situations. So we've got Maria's journey here, and it's really, from our perspective, in 3 big chapters. When a displaced person is forced to flee, what it is that they need from us. So first, what they want is how to seek safety, where to apply, where to go, especially in these kinds of contexts. We know that there's a lot of rumors and misinformation. Then when they reach safety, the first thing that they need is to be able to apply for asylum. And from there, seeking a place to live, getting assistance, accommodation. And then after that, how do they access local services like getting medical help or enroll their children into school? So designing digital services have to be from the point of view of the user or of the displaced person. And then in the last chapter would be rebuilding life. So after, if they stayed in the country of asylum, for example, how can they get work permits, find jobs? If they've moved to a resettlement country or if they're returning to their country of origin, what do they need in that scenario? So this has been the perspective that we've been looking at digital services from. So, and this is where the digital gateway the idea or the vision of the digital gateway came from. The idea was to create an easily accessible digital entry point that people can use to get and exchange information with UNHCR, receive services, and find solutions to their problems. So this was the whole vision of the digital gateway. Next, please. You just skipped a slide, sorry. Yes. Thank you. So I just wanted to put this into perspective to show you in the digital realm where we came from and where we are now. In all of this time in the past, there's been a lot, like for majority of the time that UNHCR existed was before all of the digital tools. So there were a lot of paper lists and spreadsheets and MS Access databases. But then in the last, let's say from 2001 until now, things have evolved a lot. And we have Progress, which is our digital registration case management tool. It used to be offline in various instances around the world where all of our offices used it for registration. And that evolved a lot since then. So now we've got a whole ecosystem of tools that are online and accessible to all staff. But the big transformation has been since last year with introducing self-service. So it's been quite a big milestone for us. It started off last year with self-onboarding platforms. So that's for persons who are not registered with UNHCR. We don't know them yet, but they are seeking to be registered and seek asylum. So we've introduced self-onboarding platforms in a few countries. I'll be talking about that in a minute. But the idea is, as of next year, to introduce more functionalities and services. So after a person is registered, what kind of services they can access online, how do they communicate with us in their most preferred communication channels. Next, please. So as I said in the beginning from the user research, users really want to access our services in one place and be able to communicate with us in one place. So we've got help sites, which are in many of our operations, not all yet, but on the way. And so those help sites are managed by the country operations. They provide information in the context for refugees, asylum seekers, displaced persons, telling them how to seek asylum, get access to services. So it's really a key information point. And those pages are available in many languages. So the digital gateway would be accessible through those sites, which means that they always have to go to the same place. Next, please. Now, the self-onboarding portal, which was rolled out last year, how does it work? So this is for persons who we don't know yet. They're not registered with UNHCR. They can go on a website online, enter their personal data, so all of biodata information, submit their ID documents if they have them, capture a photo, a selfie of themselves, upload this photo, and they can do the same for all of their family members. And at the end of this process, they submit the application and get an appointment to come in person to UNHCR. This is where all of their information will be verified, their biometrics are enrolled, and then they're registered with us. So what this means is that it saves a lot of time for the refugees. They don't have to be traveling to get appointments. They don't have to sit in long interviews and provide all of their information. It becomes a lot faster. They come to the office and everything's already there. It's a matter of verification and biometrics. So it saves time for refugees. It saves time for the staff who can then focus all of their efforts on providing services that rather than data entry. Next, please. So where this was rolled out was part of the Safe Mobility Initiative. So this initiative was at the request of the US government to expand lawful pathways to the United States for refugees and migrants in Latin America. So UNHCR partnered up with IOM and supported the launch of the Safe Mobility portals. So the portals were rolled out in June last year in Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and then in October in Ecuador. And what it did is that it allowed refugees and migrants to apply for those legal pathways online and where they were, in the countries where they were, rather than take very dangerous routes to the US. So they could formalize their interest and submit that online. So up until now, we've had over 71,000 submitted applications, and that's a total of 174,000 individuals. Out of those, 31,000 were submitted for resettlement to the United States. So that really improved access to legal pathways to the US. And to support this, a regional contact center was set up in Panama so that people can have information about the initiative and also receive support on how to use the portal. It's available in 3 languages, in English, Spanish, and Creole. So what you see here on the screen is a little bit of what the interface looks like. Next, please. So, and then after that, for Egypt, we had a similar request from the Egypt operation. When the war broke out in Sudan last year, Egypt received over 250,000, probably more by now, Sudanese refugees who entered the country. The office was not really set up for a big emergency, and so they were struggling to keep up with the registration, and they had long waiting times for refugees. So the request was to have a similar way for people to self-register online. There were a lot of connected, digitally literate people among the Sudanese population who had access to smartphones, and so they also were largely documented, which would really ease that process. So the same thing was developed for the Egypt operation. While it's not fully online yet because it's pending government approval, the system is ready to be used and will really facilitate the work of the operation and will enable people to really register without having to travel long distances in Egypt to reach the office. So this is the self-onboarding component is only the start. Next year, a full range of services is slated to be deployed online, and that includes being able to process an asylum application, receive documents from UNHCR, so refugee documents, which are really important for a person's legal status in the country of asylum. They'll be able to check the case status of where their case stands, whether it is in refugee status determination procedures or resettlement. They'll be able to see the state of their cash assistance, whether it's ready for collection and so on. They'll be able to update information about their education, their occupation, which is really important to match them to different opportunities. And of course, digital engagement, which is all of the different ways that we communicate with populations. So that could be really through WhatsApp channels, through contact centers, through emails, and all of these ways. And lastly, just to say that there is a huge potential for self-service use. Right now, we know that there's 1.6 million new registrations this year alone, and there's already 16 million registered in progress today. So the potential of many of these users to be onboarded on self-service and having access to digital services will really be very transformational in the way we interact with refugees and displaced persons. And there's a lot more plans in the future about how we scale up and how we bring in other actors, governments, and other UN agencies and NGOs to be part of this project. This is the vision for the future. But that's all for now from my side. Back to you, Andrew.
And thank you very much, Leah. That was great. I'm going to close up with, and mindful of the time, I'll probably be a little quick through this last bit. But we want to talk here about inclusion through interoperability and the fact that UNHCR doesn't do any of its work alone, frankly. Our work is really focused on collaborating with partners. And here, without sharing data with those partners, we're unable to do our work well. There's no point, for example, for UNHCR or governments to collect data without sharing it, because it means that activities have to happen all over again. We have to re-register just to provide a service across a whole range of partners. So the main reason why we want to do interoperability is to make sure that partners can collaborate on the same data and build the records together to be able to provide a unified humanitarian response. So the idea here is that we followed our data sharing practices alongside our strategic partnerships to play a really important role in providing support and services to displaced populations. And so very quickly, we have to make sure that we're building those efforts on a very sound data protection base, right? And here UNHCR is very well aware of the risks associated with the sharing of data on vulnerable populations. We have just released our internal data protection policy, which allows us to take a human rights-based approach to data protection. Our core principles are really based on the global principles on data sharing. That is that we want to minimize the data that is collected, make sure that it's done with purpose and specificity, that it's fair, accurate, confidential, and that it's done in a way that refugees actually are aware of why we're collecting the data and why it needs to be shared. So here, with all our partners, we have a kind of regulatory enabling environment whereby agreements are drawn up between either governments or other UN partners or NGO partners to be able to make sure that the conditions by which we share data are safe, and that they are restricted in a way that doesn't threaten the well-being of refugees. We want to be risk averse. We want to build our data sharing in a way that at once provides the protection that refugees need, the solutions that they need, but is balanced against the data protection necessary to make sure that people don't get into trouble. So these data sharing agreements are numerous in UNHCR. We've got hundreds of them covering the globe, and the many partners that we work with. But we need a system that automates those regulatory enablers. So what we've done is we've built an interoperability platform called the PRIMES interoperability platform, which is really based on the ideas that we want it to be scalable, and that we want to make sure that each time we enter into a data sharing arrangement with another partner, that it can be configurable rather than having to go back to a supplier and rebuild a system. We want to make sure that the system makes data available to all manner of data sharing agreements, and it's these agreements are really it's really the digitizing, I would say, of the agreements that I showed you on the previous slide. So we take these data sharing agreements here, and we want to make sure that they're accurately reflected in the system, and that the conditions for sharing data are actually coded into our platform to make sure that our system is designed in a way that make sure that the data is secure and protected. I want to cover now a few use cases, and they're very exciting to us because it's all well and good to talk about data sharing in the abstract, but we have very real world examples of how data sharing includes refugees in national systems and displaced persons in national systems. So what we're doing in Ethiopia with the government after entering into a tripartite agreement with the government, and when I say tripartite, I mean 2 government departments in Ethiopia and UNHCR have come together to make sure that the registration data that's collected by government is shared with the national identification authorities to be able to print a digital identity card, which really gives them, because of the regulatory environment in Ethiopia, gives displaced persons who are not nationals in that country access to all manner of services and benefits that are afforded to the citizens of that country. So they include access to services, bank accounts, SIM cards, and really a whole range of efforts that result in really positive outcomes for refugees. I just wanted to say that in doing so, we wanted to develop a system whereby the drive for sharing the data is not triggered by either UNHCR or the government, but by the refugees themselves. So what happens? They come forward, they ask for the ID card, and only then is the data triggered to move over from the refugee government department to the National ID Authority. So here we have the refugee really at the center of the process, making sure that when cards are issued for them, that they're actually asking for them. And this was all a very heavy process. It involved quite some negotiation with the government. So really a good process there that's just initiating. Now we intend to provide 814,000 refugees a provisioning of the national ID card which is digitally enabled. We have another example in Uganda where we had a real challenge there of refugees not being able to meet KYC requirements that citizens could usually enjoy. So here we had a huge number of refugees. I believe the last count was 1.4 million refugees in Uganda, perhaps up to 1.5 already, where we had a few years ago the challenge of refugees not being able to get SIM cards. And this resulted in real significant socioeconomic exclusion with no access to mobile money, no ability to contact family and friends. So you can imagine how the lack of having a SIM card really was quite heavy. So what we did was we came into an agreement through our interoperability platform with the Uganda Communications Commission to allow the kiosks to biometrically check, as they did for their citizens, against our refugee data. So what they would get was a yes or a no, yes or no, this person is a refugee, registered jointly by UNHCR and government, and then that would result in the provisioning of a SIM card. So here we have a really good example of collaborating with a state authority to come up with a solution for making sure that that refugees were able to access telecoms and SIM cards and cellular access for over 600,000 refugees across the country of Uganda. Very successful program, and really overcoming some regulatory hurdles that we finally worked through, and were able to provide a good digital solution there. Another example, refugee resettlement. UNHCR works very closely with what we call internally resettlement governments, or in other words, governments that receive refugees from host countries when their conditions of asylum are so abject that they need to be resettled to the United States or to Canada or to some European countries, and, well, really, frankly, all over the world. In fact, in 2023, 96,000 refugees were able to depart on resettlement. Now, here, we want to make sure that those processes are efficient, and our resettlement governments who are receiving those countries, those refugees, really have to have confidence that the people who are getting on airplanes are who they said they were when they registered with us, right? So what we do is we have a interoperable relationship with these receiving countries to ensure that they're receiving the data prior to folks getting on airplanes, and that they use that data to have a sort of thread or continuity of identity right from the point of registration, where we may have seen them as long as 17 years ago, to the moment when they're getting on airplanes. So that thread of identity really passing through many years of interaction with UNHCR, and then handed on through interoperability to the receiving government. So a really happy story there that we're very proud of in the organization. Another one that we're doing in Mozambique is where we share our information with the Mozambican government, and this again is across two government departments, whereby the data shared by the refugee authority in Mozambique is shared with the passport issuing authority, and that refugees are then able to receive international travel documents that allow them, through interoperability from their point of registration onto the issuance of a travel document, to receive that document and then confidently travel outside Mozambique's borders for the purposes of whatever they are pursuing, whether it be labor opportunities or actual resettlement. So really, these are the very real world examples of how interoperability between governments and UNHCR, or with partners such as WFP, or we have many others, of course, really build on the confidence that we have in the data that is collected, and how that data is used for the good of the populations we serve in vast vast numbers. We're talking about many hundreds of thousands of transactions daily to other partners to make sure that we're delivering the services that people need. So this is all for my presentation on interoperability. I'd like to thank Leah and Sam. And maybe Sam, if you'd like to take the floor and we can move on to a Q&A. Sam?
Thanks, Andrew. So at this point, we have 15 minutes left of our hour, and happy to receive any questions. If anyone would like to raise a hand, I think we can then unmute you, or otherwise you can put a question in the chat.
Sam, I see there's a question here from an external source.
Oh yeah, so I see the first question. Is this part of the VOSOC service too? By my understanding, but please come in, that's more related to natural disasters and disaster management. Colleagues, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not, at least from the initiative spoken about today, there's not much of a linkage between the two. Is there anything else you'd like to ask about that? Okay. Then we have another question. So it says, first, excellent presentation. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question regarding partnerships and support you might search for in digital transformation. As this meeting is open to anyone outside of the UN family, how can someone external like me help and support and engage on such initiatives? Mike, do you want to take this one?
I see Andrew came on camera. Andrew, you want to go first, or?
Well, I mean, I just had sort of a knee-jerk reaction to that. It depends is the answer, I think. We wouldn't freely share the data without knowing what. Well, first of all, there's many ways to share data, right? But we wouldn't normally enter into a partnership agreement with an external actor unless, because it's personal data, unless there was an outcome for a positive outcome for the people involved, right? So much of our data sharing work is about sharing with partners who work in a humanitarian setting to make sure that that person is known also to the partner, and therefore can add to their to the services they may wish to offer. So generally, it's service providers or governments that we're sharing the personal data with. So and also we would have to enter into an agreement with them. There is another way to share data, and that's when the refugees asserts their identity themselves. And we're looking at also many opportunities in the area of complementary pathways, legal pathways, whereby refugees can assert their identities as people known to governments or UNHCR to other partners who may be interested in having assurances that that person is who they say they are. And then, of course, it would be the refugee themselves that would share that data. So there are two methodologies, and they're really operationally specific, I would say. But yeah, Mike, over to you.
Yeah, just to say more broadly, absolutely welcome partnering with either individuals or private sector or other entities on any of the areas that perhaps I touched on at the beginning. And it could be as an individual that you could even help us with, new thinking or testing, or we really have put user-led design at the beginning and the heart of what we're trying to do here. So it really depends in what capacity, and there are a range of different ways to get involved. So please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, walton@unhr.org, and we can talk about that. But yeah, partnership in the strategy more broadly is absolutely critical. As Andrew said, within the data protection and other environments, it's more restricted, but 100% we want to do this journey together, and that's very much in the spirit of the Global Refugee Compact as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So the next question we have is from Julie from ICAO. Question to Andrew: does the interoperability framework mentioned also work with or otherwise leverage the ICAO Public Key Directory, PKD?
We do have a relationship with ICAO. In fact, we often go to Montreal, where ICAO is situated, and we are looking at an internal PKI infrastructure. Now, whether we leverage the ICAO public key directory or not remains to be seen. It's a work in progress, and we have Sanjay, who works with us here and is directly linked, of course, to ICAO, and we want to. It's been backburnered a bit because our workload is frankly hard to keep up with, but it is an area of study and work that we intend to pursue. Sam, I don't know, since it's more in your domain, if you wanted to add to that, but largely speaking, I think that we're aware of the benefits of a public key directory. It poses real challenges for us in our offline environments, because then the key becomes complicated, and that's more of a technical thing, but yeah, I don't know, Sam, if you would like to add.
Thanks, Andrew. You've covered a lot off, and I think during my presentation I touched on our existing and next generation of verifiable credentials, and that's certainly linked to your question there, and it's something we're looking to improve upon in the coming months, really. So yeah, I think we'll be back in touch on that.
Yeah, and I see the correction that's come in from the initial question, Sam. Yeah, of course, there are ways, and Mike, you answered that question properly. So lean more on I've misinterpreted the question. Let's lean more on Mike's response than my own. Thanks.
Okay, next question is, what is the unique identifier for individual registration? Is it the same in all countries? Does it depend on different types of? Does it depend on the type of beneficiary we're serving? Say somebody has a passport, somebody's stateless, etc. So I can take that, or do you want to take that, Andrew? Leah?
Go ahead, and I'll add if you want, Sam.
Okay, so we have unique identifiers, or at least unique reference numbers assigned to individuals, and then we go. So registration isn't just a one-time event with UNHCR. We continually build upon the information that we have about individuals as they come back to us over time. And so a part of that is strengthening somebody's identity, perhaps with the use of links to a state-issued passport, might be biometrics to understand about the uniqueness of the individual across our data set. It might be corroborating information against other people from their community or other forms of identification. But yeah, in terms of the individual identification number, we do have a unique reference for each person across all of the countries in which we work.
There was another question there, Sam, I see, and I'll take it. Another question is on the identification of vulnerable groups. Do you self-disclosure normally, or does the UNHCR categorize them when needed? We have built into our registration processes protection-sensitive staff who are there to identify, at least initially, and refer onwards, because they wouldn't normally have the set of expertise required to deal with the problem in a heavy registration exercise at the time. So our goal is to sort of be the eyes and ears of partners and service providers to be able to identify what we codify as specific needs in our database. And we have a whole long list of specific needs that also corresponds a little bit to the Washington group of vulnerabilities. And here we make sure that when we are registering, we also, as a protection agency, really have to make sure that all our registration clerks have at least some initial capabilities to identify specific needs and vulnerabilities. That being said, of course, we have other means of doing so, and registration is not the only way that we do it. And an important part of data interoperability is, of course, being able to refer, right? So if there is a particularly sensitive case and it belongs, say, with UNICEF in the Primero system or other, in another system, we need to be able to have automated means to refer those cases. And just a last word about automation. I mean, we say automated, but there's always humans behind it, right? So if you're sending a case through a referral off digitally, it shouldn't go off into the vapors or into the heavens. It really has to be covered well by a robust standard operating procedure to have humans behind the digitization that support all these efforts, right? So yeah, we really have a categorization process, but and we use self-disclosure. The question is there, but we also use our eyes and ears and sort of listen as we're registering folks, whether there's extreme vulnerabilities, and we pick them up all the time. Whether they're if we see, for example, some drama at a registration table, we often will separate the family members and have protection sensitive staff coming in to pick up on the problems that particular family may be facing. The problem is we only have about 4 minutes per person, especially in an emergency. So we do have to be very quick and make sure that our registration practices don't get stopped by the protection intervention that could play out there. That's why I stress the word referral and moving the capability to support outside the ecosystem of registering populations. I'll stop there. Sam?
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I believe, that was the last question. So unless there's any more questions, with 5 minutes to go, I think we can start to wrap up this session.
Right. I think what I'll do is I'll just say a few words, Sam, if you don't mind, and then pass off to Mike. I think what this presentation shows and what we tried to convey in the meeting is that things are moving and changing in UNHCR. We're moving out of the analog domain and trying to increase access through digital means. And here, what we've always not been as good as we could be at is putting people at the center. And here, I would like to say that our digital systems through Mike's team and the user research we're doing, or making sure that somebody, when identified, can actually have an application that allows them to assert their identity and say that they're known to UNHCR, is a whole new paradigm shift on how we can support people digitally. Another word that I'd like to drop is collaboration. Again, partnerships, you saw in the interoperability presentation that I have, are really powerful in enabling partnerships across many agencies and governments to come together on the humanitarian and development response. So here we are very forward-leaning and collaborating on our data for the benefit of refugees. Everyone should be digitally included and should have the opportunity to contribute to the world's digital development. And we want to make sure that no one's left behind. So we do understand that some are digitally illiterate and that we have to keep our analog processes going, but we view the digital world as being an adjunct to that. And as we evolve into more digitally literate populations, as was the case, say, in managing the Ukraine response, we see that there are huge opportunities at play here that help with efficiency, but most importantly, really making sure that our populations are well protected and served. And with that, I think I'll pass over to you, Mike.
No, 100%, Andrew. Thank you. And I think that key point that you made at the end is critical, because this isn't about creating more of a digital distance between us and the forcibly displaced. It's actually about being more efficient to enable higher quality service and more interaction at a quality level. So thanks everybody for giving that presentation. I just want to finish by saying thank you to the UN 2.0 team for arranging this week. It's been great to meet you all today and have some questions from you. And Sam's put our emails in the chat, so please reach out to us if you want to have further conversation. We've really tried to stress that in the UN 2.0 spirit, we've focused on the power of digital, the power of understanding user behavior in order to deliver a more effective design, and the power of data, both from a data security perspective, but also the power of data sharing. So really hope that's emphasized the power of the new UN 2.0 approach across different partnerships. And enjoy the other sessions that are held this week, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to present to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.